So Dead by Daylight have just tweeted out some cool things talking about skill check changes that are going to be coming into the game when you're on a hook, and they talked about Trickster possibly getting a buff in the future. Let's talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and the king, welcome back to the channel. So, as you just heard, Dead by Daylight have made a tweet indicating that there's going to be some changes coming on in, especially more towards the PTB. I want to give my input on this and talk about everything that they mentioned. Before we go ahead and jump on this, I ask you guys two things. Number one, we are live on Twitch right now. This is our schedule that you are seeing on screen. So if you are watching this video while we are live streaming, make sure you guys come on out and say hello. It would mean the world to me. And number two, over 60% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we're going to be daily uploading Dead by Daylight content for the next few months. So make sure you hit that subscribe button down below to keep up with content. Make sure you double check as well, because sometimes YouTube unsubscribes you. With that being said, let's talk about these changes that Dead by Daylight are proposing to bring into the PTB. So today, DBD created a tweet about an hour ago, and they said, next up for accessibility changes, struggling. As requested, button mashing on the hook has been replaced for skill checks in the next PTB. And they showed us this with a very little funny segment of how people need to hit their skill checks on controller and how they need to hit their skill checks on mouse and keyboard. We're going to talk about basically how this works. So simply, when you are in your second state on the hook, instead of spamming the button out to struggle, as that's a very outdated and old mechanic, you'll now have skill checks. This is something that the community has asked for such a long time. And for the new player experience, for those of you guys wondering, like, what if I'm not good at skill checks? What if I miss a skill check? Am I just immediately going to die because I don't know how to hit these? The answer is no. They did reply to Polly, and they said that you'll lose a chunk of the bar each time you miss a skill check. So this is a little bit more fair. You won't immediately die, but you'll be able to lose a good chunk of your bar. And that way, if you still need to get out of the game or you're trying to give someone the hatch, you have the ability to do so. But at the same time, you won't be punished for missing just one skill check and then automatically dying, kind of like missing your decisive strike. So I personally think this change is pretty good. I think it works out pretty well, and this actually leads to a lot of good things. Number one, sometimes when you're struggling, it messes up and it thinks that you're not struggling anymore and you automatically die. Those are the worst cases, and I'm sure it's happened to everybody at least once. And this also is changing the way that skill checks are going to be looked at. Recently, with games such as Home Sweet Home and another game, that Monstrum, that I played not too long ago, they have these different unique type of skill checks, very similar to Dead by Daylight, where you are either required to press a certain key, or you're either required to, pick a side on a locker, whatever the case may be, just making things a little bit more interesting. And I think this is one of those things that definitely shakes things up and really changes it, as small as it is. I think this is a big step in the right direction, because from now, Dead by Daylight can start looking into other things and start messing around with other things. Maybe if you get caught in a trapper's trap, you can get a skill check, or if you're opening a chest, you can get skill checks. Hypothetically, of course, I'm not actually saying that should be a thing, but it just makes you think that, hey, more things can come on out that can really shake things up and make them different from the norm and what we're used to, and make it a little bit more interesting. Now, there has also been concern about this on how it actually works when it comes down to giving somebody the hatch. Normally, if you're trying to give your friend a hatch, if they're on the hatch or they're just the last alive and you want to die, you can quickly just do that and they can jump into the hatch. Now you would have to actually wait until you miss some skill checks, and then progressively over time you'll be able to give them the hat. So we'll have to see how that actually works out and plays out in the PTB, which should be in about a month and a half from now. Probably just a month at this point. So we'll have to see what ends up happening. But my friends, that is going to bring us to the second segment of this video, and that is Dead by Daylight teasing that we're potentially going to be getting some Trickster buffs. They actually replied to this in a tweet, and the original tweet said, but like anything on the Trickster, he genuinely is so underpowered and you guys haven't said anything. And Dead by Daylight have replied saying, there's some changes on the way, we're hoping to share more very soon. So it looks like we can expect some more Trickster changes coming out very, very soon, and I'm very happy about it, because after playing him more and more and more, I'm realizing how weak he is. He is terrible when it comes down to pretty much everything besides fun. And I spoke about this on my streams a lot. I never really spoke about it in a video, But fun and viability are not on a scale together. Just because a killer is fun does not mean they need to be not viable. This isn't something that's on a spectrum such as happy or sad. This is more so on a spectrum of just biased. I can have fun with a killer that is really strong, and I can also have fun with a killer that's very weak. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be one of the other. And it seems like Dead by Daylight recently have been picking sides. When we see chapters like the Twin or, you know, a chapter like the Trickster, it seems that they're going more for the fun side of things and not the viable side of things, which again, isn't on the same spectrum. I still have fun playing Nurse and, you know, performing very well and sometimes getting close miss hits, things like that. Doesn't necessarily mean that the killer needs to be weak. So I'm happy that they are going to look into these things. And let's actually talk about some of the Trickster changes that we can see it coming on into the game that would make him a lot better. And these are just some things that I thought about while I was playing, and I'm sure a lot of people have said the same thing, and other content creators as well. Number one, I always see a lot of people talking about the 115 speed, buff him up to that. I don't necessarily think we need a 115 speed on him. I think what would help more is that if his initial slowdown when he's actually tossing his blades aren't as slowed down as they are. When you're using your power main event or you're just tossing a bunch of blades, you eventually become slower than a walking nurse. It is not fun whatsoever, and this definitely needs to be looked into, and it could make it a lot easier to start using those powers. On top of that, there is incredible recoil as if you were using a gun with your hands. Doesn't really make sense to me considering that they said it becomes a little bit more accurate. Maybe I'm just looking into it too much, but the recoil has to go because it makes your shot so much more difficult and your hands really shouldn't have recoil. On top of that, I also think that 8 blades are way too high for you to injure a survivor. A lot of people have been comparing him to Huntress. When someone were to toss down a pallet, you can just throw your hatchet, get them down instantly. With him, you have to successfully hit 8 blades, and by the time the survivor even gets ready to move, you've only tossed about 3 blades. It's not very viable whatsoever. If this was knocked down to just 5, it would be so much more better. That change alone could make him, without anything else, so much more better than he is. And then finally, the final change that I think I would personally add to him is adding Ricochet to base. They obviously messed around with Ricochet and how it works as is, so putting it on base and instead of a purple add-on could actually be very beneficial. And I think that people would really enjoy that as well. Those are just my concepts and my ideas that I think could make him a lot more viable in the game, and people would actually genuinely enjoy playing him while still having fun on both sides. And hopefully we will see some of those changes coming out and being announced very soon. We're going to have to wait and see what Dead by Daylight has in store for us, but I think that can definitely buff up the Trickster and make him a lot better. Speaking of, a lot of people have been mentioning when is my tier list going to be coming out, talking about the Trickster and all of the other killers. That's going to be coming out soon. I want to see what changes they're going to be making him to him first before jumping the gun, and then they change it the next day, like when I made my flashlight tutorial. So we'll be waiting. But my friends, that is going to wrap it up for this video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know how you guys feel about the new skill check changes that are coming to when you're on a hook, as well as Trickster changes being planned and in the works. I would love to hear what you guys think about this. Make sure you guys check out us on Twitch as we are live, and don't forget to subscribe down below. We'll see you next time, guys. As always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.